everybody. We are going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully you were able to enjoy some deep breathing there and support your own brain health. We'll talk about that pufferfish in a little bit. But I am Wendy Elmo, and welcome. This is one of my favorite things to talk about of all the things that we talk about. Love talking about brain injury, but I also like talking about brain health and what you can do to support your own brain health or the people that you work with. So if you're just getting here, please add in the chat. You can put your name and where you're from if you feel like saying hi, and tell us who you're here for. Why did you choose to do this, to get this information? Did you want it for your clients? Did you want it for yourself, family members? Why did you come here for that, for this information? So just a little bit about us first, real quick. We are Brain Links, Paula Denslow, Jennifer Raymond, and I, and we get funding. We're a grant-based program. We get funding from the ACL at the federal level and from Tennessee's Department of Health's Traumatic Brain Injury Program. What we do is we're a statewide team of brain injury specialists, and it's our job to give professionals the information that they need to best serve people with brain injuries. And I think keeping people's brains healthy, if they've had an injury, is one of those very important things that we do. We also have lots and lots of educational materials. Our website is tndisability.org/brain. And I'm sure by now Paula or Jennifer is putting that in the chat for you. And you can go and spend some time there and find what you're looking for. And if you don't, just contact one of us. We also have toolkits. We have 4 of them now, one for healthcare providers, school nurses, families, caregivers, and survivors, and then one for service professionals, which is probably what a lot of you are here today. And then we also ran the Tennessee Brighter Futures Collaborative, which brought people across the state from different systems together to learn about the different systems. There's lots of great information on our website on Tennessee Brighter Futures too. So let's jump into brain health. What we're going to talk about today is basically 2 simple things that can damage or change our brains over time, and things that you can do to improve. And I always say when I do this that if you hear something and you're like, oh no, that's bad news for me, or that's bad news for someone that I know, there's always good news. So if you didn't hear it, ask me about it. Our brains are really remarkable, and what we can do to change them is really quite incredible. So there's always opportunity here for positive change. So my disclaimer first, I'm a speech language pathologist. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a medical doctor, but I have a fascination with the brain and a fascination with brain health. And I am a certified brain health coach through the Amen clinics. Dr. Amen, if you're not aware of him, this is a course that teaches doctors about brain health. And so I took that, and it was awesome. And that's part of where my information comes from. If I won't answer questions about your own personal issue that you might be having, I'll answer it in generalities because I'm not a doctor. If you have questions about yourself, you should speak with your doctor. There are some great resources for the Center from the Center of Disease Control, the CDC. And then there's also a great book by Dr. Amen called Memory Rescue. And I don't love that title because it's so much more. It's really about brain health and evidence supporting brain health. So that's a great read if you're looking to learn more. And everything that we're going to talk about here today is evidence-based. So I challenge you to think about, what do you want your brain to look like? Do you want it to be strong? Do you want it to have lots of connections? Do you want it to be able to solve problems and solve hard problems and solve them quickly and efficiently? And how do you want your brain to be fueled? Do you want it to be fueled with healthy foods for it? Or do you want it to be fueled with processed foods? I love these pictures here because they all kind of look like brains, and they're all things that are very healthy for your brain. And you can think about what you want the resting state of your brain to look like. Do you want it to be depressed and anxious, kind of as this background noise for it, or do you want it to be calm and not kind of running away all the time? So let's talk about things that impact our brains. Inflammation is something that negatively impacts our brains. And unfortunately, all of these really amazing looking things here to the right, the M&Ms and gummy bears and pastries and cheesecake, all of those things produce inflammation throughout our body, including our brain. A sedentary lifestyle also negatively impacts our brain. Genetics can impact your brain. However, there's a lot that we can do. So you say, okay, well, someone in my family or multiple people in my family have Alzheimer's, so therefore that's what's going to happen to my brain. That is not true. That doesn't have to happen. You have, there's something called epigenetics, which is our ability to turn on and off our genes. And these things that we're going to talk about here today have the ability to turn on good genes and off bad genes. They're going to negatively impact us. So that's not a, in fact, there's a group in Africa that has the highest proportion of the gene that causes Alzheimer's, and they have extremely low rates of it because they've turned that gene off. So even that doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen to you. Toxins impact our brains. Our mental health impacts our brain for sure. Infections will impact it. Neurohormone deficiencies. Obesity impacts our brain. The bigger the bigger that we are, the smaller our brain is. And I don't mean tall or short. I mean the size of the rest of our body, probably due to things like inflammation hurting the brain. Diabetes will impact the brain. Again, too much sugar and inflammation, and then just the spikes and drops are not good for our brain. Poor sleep is not good, and a lack of new learning. Also, ACEs impact our brain. So if someone has had a lot of traumatic events in their life, that can have lasting negative impacts on their health and on their brain and even on their longevity. And here might be one of those things that you say, oh no, I or somebody that I know have gone through all kinds of hardship growing up. This is really the hardship that you've sustained up to age 18. Things like economic hardship, divorce or separation, having somebody in your family that abuses substances or is incarcerated. All of those things produce stress on our body that can negatively impact our brain, but we can change that as well. And so what ACEs does is it changes the way, what they do is change the way that we process memory and emotion, and how it changes how we deal with stress. So if you think about being under intense stress, you don't know if the person coming home is going to be drunk and how they're going to treat you. That is really just living in a whole lot of stress. And what happens is the emotional part, the amygdala of our brain, gets lit up and is just firing, and it won't let the frontal lobe, the real thinking part, and the part that says, here's what we're going to do in this situation, here's how we're going to solve this problem. It shuts down that frontal lobe. So we really need to balance that better so that our frontal lobe can say, hey, let me think about this and do what I need to do. And that produces brain chemicals that lead to inflammation, creates weaker connections in the brain, and it changes our telomeres. And why those shoelaces are there in that sneaker is because a telomere is kind of like the aglet that on the end of a shoelace, that plastic part, and it breaks down with more stress, and not just ACEs, but any other kind of bodily stress. And that can lead to faster aging, to more diseases, and even a shorter lifespan. Okay, sounds bad again, but we can rebuild even the telomeres. It's never too late. Also, traumatic brain injuries, strokes, and tumors can impact our brain. And there used to be 9 modifiable risk factors for dementia that they had identified, and 3 more recently have been added. And all of them account for about 40% of the dementias worldwide. So if we can get the message of this slide is if we can take some control over these modifiable risk factors, then we can modify our chances of having dementia. So depression, we can work, and I'm going to talk about a number of these things. We're going to talk about our mental health, controlling diet. Even if you haven't had a lot of education, you stopped after high school and you went into a vocation, then there still doesn't matter. Just keep learning. Even learn within that job. We'll talk about that. Physical inactivity, we can change that. Obesity, hypertension, hearing impairment, low social contact, smoking, air pollution, we can have some control over, traumatic brain injury, and too much alcohol. I hate to say that alcohol is a poison for our brain and for our body. So the less of that we can do, the better. So on the left-hand side here, you see a healthy brain. This is on a SPECT scan, and this this is showing blood flow and oxygenation to the brain, and and activity to some extent. And so smooth is good. A real brain doesn't look like that. In real life, it has all of these ridges in it, as I'm sure you've seen. But this is what it should look like in a SPECT scan. On the right, we see a brain on drugs and alcohol and what that does. And so this is indicating like a lack of oxygen and blood supply to those areas of the brain. And that's not a good thing. However, again, news, I want to stress that. I don't want anybody walking away from here going, oh no, I'm doomed, because you're not. You can change your brain. And what we see here is in the top brain, we see that after multiple concussions, this person has had damage to the anterior temporal poles where the arrows are. And you can see that there's an asymmetry there, and it's worse on the left side than the right. This person has a bad temper, but he was able to change his brain. The bottom one, you see, it's much smoother because of mostly lifestyle changes that he was making. So as we go, I want you to think about yourself, or Jen asked you at the beginning to put in, why are you here? Who are you here for? Is it for you? Is that what drove you to be here? Are you here for family? Are you here for your people that you serve? So think about that, and think about things that you could be changing. So if it's for your job, what kinds of things can you be recommending? If it's for you, you know more than anybody what kinds of things you need to change. So you might make a list of what things that you might think about committing to changing, and what steps you might take to get there. And this is kind of as you're maybe chewing on some walnuts or dark chocolate, or having an orange or some green tea, some healthy things for you. So the first thing that we can do for our brains is to be resilient. This doesn't mean that you can't have a good cry, that you can't go through a period of mourning, but going through hard things can actually produce good things for our lives if we let them. So it can produce post-traumatic growth. So after you've gone through it, you might see improved relationships if you haven't cut yourself off from everybody. You might see new possibilities for your life that maybe never would have presented had you gotten that job. You got an even better one. You might see a greater appreciation for your life, a greater sense of personal strength, and you might see also spiritual development. And so this picture in the bottom right is of what our building, the Tennessee Disability Coalition, looked like right after the tornado that came through Nashville right before COVID hit. And it really did a lot of damage. And we had a team call with everybody of the coalition right after that. And our director, Carol Westlake, said, we're going to get through this. She set the tone right from the beginning, saying, here, we're okay. She had, kind of tears in her eyes and tears in her voice, telling us though, but it's going to be okay. And of course it was, and the building is even more beautiful inside than it was before. And it was an opportunity to make changes. So how do you say, okay, Wendy, I'm not resilient. I'm just not. I tend to just go into a puddle and I have a hard time coming out of that. So what can you do to become resilient, to cultivate it? Well, you can create a commitment with yourself to find meaning in whatever has happened. And I'll tell you that doesn't always come right away. It's not something that you can say, okay, the tornado just hit. What meaning does this have? Well, we don't necessarily know yet. It's over time. You can kind of look back, and sometimes the meaning has come along and you haven't realized it. So stopping to say, what have I learned from that? What did that show me? Can be really helpful, even if it's something that happened years ago, because you can go, oh, you know what? In my head, my track talk was, that was terrible, that was horrible. And when I look back at it now, I can see that some really good things came from that. Now, I'm not saying I would want it to happen again, or that I even wanted it to happen, but some good things came from it, and we need to embrace those. We need to have a belief in ourselves about our capacity to create a positive outcome. No matter what the situation is right now, I can create a positive outcome from this. Having the willingness to grow. Change is hard for a lot of people, but be willing to grow. So change, think of it as, I'm going to grow through this and from this. And then there's a choice to laugh and to be grateful. And I have choice capitalized there because I know that when you're in the middle of a dark time, it can feel like you don't have a choice at all. I can't choose to come out of this. I can't choose in this next moment to be happy, but you can make choices. You can make choices as you're going down to kind of pull yourself back out. And you can also make choices on the way back up to choose more uplifting music, to choose maybe to step away from social media, only go to positive things. There's lots of choices along the way that we can make, and we have to be willing to make those in order to become resilient. And one approach to it is to ask yourself two questions when you're in the middle of something. What could possibly be right about this? If you're not wired that way to think about that, some people are, some people aren't. You want to kind of then consciously think of, okay, I can see all the bad, but what could possibly be right about this? And what in your life or in yourself can you be grateful for right now, no matter what is happening? All right, I'm still breathing. I'm going to be thankful for that. Okay, my loved one is in the hospital, but they're still alive. And there's hope there. Just thinking about, okay, I didn't get that job, but I'm still okay, and I've still got other possibilities that are out there for me right now. And I put this picture here. That's me and my daughter and my mother-in-law, Betty. And I love to use stories when I can because for me, I walk away and I remember the story. And because of the story, I can bring back the point that the person was trying to make. So that's why I share them with you. So Betty is my role model. You're not going to just see her once, you're going to see her more than once here. Um, she fell in my yard. My dog knocked her over, and I felt horrible. She went down, and her immediate response, because she's wired to be resilient, she just is wired to be positive. Um, she said, I'm okay. I'm okay. And I said, Oh, thank God you're okay. And she goes, No, my wrist is broken, but I'm okay. Thank God it wasn't my hip. Like most people wouldn't do that. They would say, I've broken my wrist. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is horrible. But she was just so grateful that she didn't, and the whole time she stayed grateful that she hadn't broken her hip. And another, let's say you're like, oh no, I broke my my wrist. This is terrible. Well, one thing to be grateful for in that moment is my daughter, who was training to be a nurse. I think she had just become a nurse at that point, a trauma nurse, and she was in the house and we called her out. And so right away we kind of all felt calm and we knew that she was handling this for us. And you can see in the background that we are in the emergency department here and Betty's going, take my picture, take my picture. Like she's just wired different than most of us, but we can be like her. Think of a Betty in your life or use my Betty. The other thing I wanted to share was about that I've never shared about Betty before. That um, if you've heard me talk about her before, um, when her husband, my father-in-law, died, um, she was always getting this, which we all hear was it takes about a year, it takes about a year and then you'll start to feel better. Well, we went to a I can't think of his name, but a positive a Hay House author, a positive speaker. This was many years ago, and we went into Manhattan to see him, and he said that grief is a choice. And she came out of that and she said it was about 8 months after he had died, and she said, I'm done grieving. That didn't mean she didn't miss him, but she was now going to really consciously get back into her life. And she was still missing him and all of that. That wasn't going to go away. I'm sure it hasn't gone away to this day, many, many years later. But it was, I'm going to move on from this now. And it was a decision. And that's a hard decision. I acknowledge that for sure. But I just wanted to share that about Betty. Um, we can also be grateful. Being grateful changes our brain. It quiets that part that is under stress all of the time, that amygdala part. And there was a gratitude study where they had three different groups, and they had one group journal what they were grateful for. Another group journaled what happened to them, really common way of journaling. Here's what happened today. And then the third group journaled about what annoyed them or bothered them today. And that kind of intuitively you think, okay, well, that's good because I'm getting it out. And what they found instead was that people who journaled about gratitude, and this can be writing down two things, that's it. Down two things that happened that day that you were grateful for, or just about the day that you were grateful for. And they found that people who did this had makes sense, had greater levels of well-being and optimism. It's a great way to kind of shift your brain into that way of thinking, but also some things that they never expected. People exercised more, they slept better, they woke up more refreshed, they had lower blood pressure, less inflammation, better immune function, they were more likely to help somebody else with a problem. So all of these things came as a byproduct of just having more gratitude in their life. And if you think about it, gratitude is a really positive, really uplifting. Well, if you're feeling that way, you're more likely to go out and to do these things like exercise. Um, so this is along the lines of gratitude. When they look at older people versus younger people, older people tend to be happy in spite of what's happening, whereas younger people are geared toward, I'll be happy if only she says yes to going to the prom with me. If only I get an A on that test, like then I'll be happy. And they hold it off. Um, Whereas with older people, they're happy in spite of, yeah, my knees hurt, my back hurts, but or hey, I just broke my wrist, but at least it wasn't my hip, and we can be happy anyway. And I guess people who are older have realized that stuff happens. It always happens, and we can be happy anyway. And so it's not just I said everything can be changed. So what about these young folks sitting out there? Well, if we know this, we can help them to be happy now. Okay, you're right. That A is going to feel really good, but what do you have in your life right now that you can be that you can be grateful for right now? What can we be happy about right now in this moment? And we'll be happy again when you get the A. And we might also reframe that, if the A is the only thing to be happy about. So thinking about those things with our younger generations. We need to preserve our mental health. Our mental health really can create a negative impact on our brain, in one part by reinforcing parts of the brain that we don't want reinforced. So again, that amygdala, if we're living under stress, we are changing that part of our brain, not for the better. So we need to be kind of firing up the right parts of our brain, the correct parts of our brain. And one thing to do is to kill the ants. And Dr. Amen calls the ants automatic negative thoughts. You may be somebody who is wired to go right to the negative. You may know somebody in your life. I know several people in my life who are just very negative. Negative is the first thought, and they tend to stay there. So you want to kill those ants. You want to ask questions like Byron Katie asks. She says, is it true to everybody hates me, nobody likes me? Is that true? Yeah, it's true. Okay, can you know it's true 100% certainty? It's absolutely true. Well, no, there are some people that do like me. I'm pretty sure my mom likes me. So we can start to kind of break that down. Okay, let's look further at it though. Well, how do I feel when I believe that thought? Well, I feel pretty crummy. I feel like somebody who people wouldn't want to be around. Well, who would I be or how would I feel if I didn't have that thought? I'd be really happy. I'd probably go around life interacting with it in a different way. So let's kill those automatic thoughts and start changing into that different way now. And then Dr. Amen says, you don't have to believe every stupid thought that you have. And we have stupid thoughts. First thing is identifying when you're having one and say, okay, what kind of thought is this? Can I categorize it and say, this is, I'm being mean to myself again, or however you want to categorize it. Dr. Amen has a book on killing the ants, and it's also on YouTube, so you don't have to buy it. You can go and listen to him reading it, and it's great for kids. Captain Snout and the Superpower Questions. Don't let the ants steal your happiness. And again, how do we bring kids into this and get them right from the beginning, teaching them to be more resilient and to be more positive and happy? We need to also be stress-free. And you might be, I kind of laugh at that. So you might be laughing at that because we know that stress comes, but we really have to be conscious of how we deal with it. And I love this from Mark Twain. I have been through some terrible things in my life. Some of actually what happened. Uh, I know people who they're constantly focused on what is coming up and how terrible it's going to be, or all of the things that could go wrong. And then most of the time, like most of the time, those things don't happen. They never happen. So you can choose to worry about them and be just feeding that amygdala and making it fire and staying in this stress state, which is going to be bad for your brain and your whole body. Or you can say, you know what? I've worked through everything and I'm prepared. So I'm not going to worry about that until it happens. I've cognitively thought about it. And this next one goes along with that, the Dalai Lama. And you just look at this man's face, and I say, whatever he has, whatever he's thinking, whatever he's taking, I want it, because this face is just so serene, and all of the pictures of him are so serene. And this is extremely powerful if you can get it. So it's if he says, if you have fear of some pain or suffering, you should examine whether there's anything you can do about it. If you can, then you don't need to worry about it. There's something that you can do. Do the thing. Don't worry, do the thing. If you cannot do anything, then there's also no need to worry about it, because there's nothing you can do. Hopefully that made sense, and you can remind yourself of that. Okay, is there something like I'm worried about this thing coming up? What do I do? Okay, there's some things I can do. Let's do them. Let's be planned about this and organized. And then if there's nothing you can do, okay, then we're just going to go through this and we're going to see how this goes. And then if you were on early enough, you saw the puffer fish. I love this little guy. Breathing in a relaxed way, deep breathing. There's lots of different ways that you can find through yoga. So you breathe in and then you breathe out. This helps to quiet the amygdala. It creates a pause between a something that has stimulus and a reaction, so that you have time to go, no, we're okay. Here's what we're going to do, rather than just jumping into something, running into something. So I just love him. Deep breathing, very important. Meditation along the same lines, very important for that amygdala and other parts of your brain. So meditation is effective for depression. It's actually over time, it is better than, well, exercise but it's better than medications, meditation and exercise. We'll talk about exercise. Meditation is great for chronic pain, great for anxiety. It's calming that part of the brain. It's great for attention deficit. It's great for addiction. Meditation changes your brain. It literally changes your brain. It doesn't do it necessarily with one time. It's the kind of practice that you want to have in your life daily. And it will produce more gray matter volume. So literally expanding your brain, it will quiet down the default mode network, your DMN. This is that sometimes they call it the monkey brain. It's the part of your brain that is just chattering all the time and telling you sometimes those ants, negative things. It's just firing them at you. The meditation quiets that down. So now you can really kind of see the good ideas that come in, or see the whole situation before reacting. It increases the hippocampus. The hippocampus is important for memory. So really important for the brain and for your overall function. And it decreases that amygdala, that part of your brain where the emotions can go crazy. And so you might say, I can't meditate. And I've heard that so many times. And when I first started meditating, I couldn't either. And I thought that people who are meditating were sitting there with nothing going on in their brain. I'm like, no, I got stuff. I got stuff going on in my brain. So I'm not doing it right. Or, I just need to stop right here. But that is also meditation. You are also just getting your brain quiet, and a good way to deal with that. So one way to meditate is to just quiet the mind and still the mind and just sit there quietly. You say, okay, well, different things are coming into my head. You want to recognize them when they come in, and try that labeling here too. Say like, okay, I'm planning, I'm organizing, I'm worrying. Label it, let it go. Next time the next one comes in, it might be immediate. Nope, I'm planning. Nope, I'm planning. And try to go back to that quiet. I like to meditate in quiet, and this is probably technically mindfulness. What I do, I uh, I kind of put my attention into my body, and so I become aware of what I'm feeling. And so that's probably much more of a mindfulness one, but it's something I can do to be quiet and to get out of my thinking brain, and I get more into the feeling. And that's a way that I can shut off my thinking brain a little bit better. You can do mantras. Um, they don't work for me great, except that sometimes there are a couple of prayers that I've memorized that I'll just do over and over and over again. And it's anything to get you out of that loop of thinking that you're in. And so I go into this loop of this prayer, and it's still quieting everything else. Guided meditations, there are some great ones on YouTube that you can find. Just play with them, and it might lead you through a field. It might lead you through your body. When my kids were little, we used to do things, they called them relaxations. And to get them to fall asleep, I would do a progressive relaxation, which is why they call them relaxations. And it would be, if you don't know what those are, they're great. They're very, very helpful because they take your attention out of your mind. It would be something like, okay, you're just laying there and take some deep breaths and get quiet, and then imagine that you are breathing warm air in through the bottom of your feet, and it comes into your feet and it swirls around your feet, relaxing all the muscles, and then it goes back out. And then you're just breathing that in progressively through more and more of your body until your whole body is relaxed in this warm. It can be warm air, it can be cool air, it can be water, it can be energy, it can be whatever you want it to be. And here are just a couple of good ones that I pulled out for children and for teens. But go and find what you like. And some of these can be used in classrooms or in group situations too. It's important that we also find purpose and joy. If we have purpose only, that's awesome. That will fuel us for a while, but we need to have joy in our lives too. And then vice versa. Joy is awesome. It's great to just kind of go out there and play all the time. But eventually we tend to need purpose as well. And a good reason for having purpose is that there's this connection to Alzheimer's disease, where they looked at a bunch of brains. It was like 246 brains of people that passed. Before they passed, they had asked them about their sense of purpose. And then they looked at the brains after the people died. And interestingly, to me, the people both showed evidence of the plaques and tangles that are indicative of Alzheimer's disease. But the people who had a sense of purpose did not exhibit Alzheimer's in their life. And the thought is that they were creating, through this purpose, they were creating other cognitive reserve. They were creating other areas of their brain that they were able to rely on, so that the plaques and the tangles didn't impact them as much. So purpose is really important. And purpose can change throughout life. There's a really great book, which I can't think of right now, that talked about purpose at different ages, and how purpose can change. throughout your life. And it can be like when you're young, it might be, I'm going to be an architect and I'm going to build big buildings. And that's awesome. Whatever your goals are, your thoughts, that's awesome. Later, in later life, like later life, it was things like my family, my grandchildren, playing mahjong with the other women. It can still be something professional. One man in the book was creating films. He was still doing that well up into his 80s. So it doesn't have to be some grand thing that someone else would look at and say that's not a worthy purpose. If it's your purpose, if it's something that drives you and keeps you going, then that's awesome. And I believe you'll I've seen, my daughter always sends them to me, that grandparents who live near their grandchildren and who are involved with their lives have a greater sense of purpose. Go ahead, Jennifer. Sorry, it took me a minute.
No, no, I would like to stop when it's the right time. Hey, Wendy, we have one question so far and a comment. I'm going to read the question to you. Um, Wendy, I'd love to hear some of your techniques for navigating how to support individuals whose injury or damage is actually within the areas of the brain that are responsible for the incredible skills like Betty.
So I would believe that it would have to be all of these things. So if something is not working, they can always change their diet. They can always focus. They can they can try to focus on something more positive. Um, we can change the language that we use with somebody. Um, we can possibly exercise more. Now, with brain injury, severe brain injury, that may not always be possible, but even passive range of motion can be helpful, or any level of movement that's more than they had before. But it's really it's the whole brain that we're trying to go for. And you could try things that were going to impact those parts of the brain, like meditation and deep breathing, can be very helpful. And sometimes the reaction that people have is not just because of the amygdala; it's because of the frontal lobe. It's because the frontal lobe isn't working right, and that's where the brakes come on. Is also from that frontal lobe, so we can do all of these things to strengthen the the frontal lobe as well. So hopefully that's it, it's all of it, all the time for everyone, or as much as we can do.
Thank you, Wendy.
Jennifer?
And a
Mhm.
couple more.
Yes.
And I'll take this moment to just say, if anyone has questions, please enter those in the Q&A. Um, we'd love to hear from you, and we might stop a little bit as we go, or we'll catch them at the end. Another point that one of our attendees made was that for her, meditation was harmful. So, not sure if we have
Really?
anything we'd like to add to that, or maybe something.
I guess I would want to know more about. I'm not asking you to share more about that now, but I'd love to hear if you want to email me how that can be harmful. Um, Now, I could see where quieting your brain can leave an opportunity for other things to come up, and that might be what you're referring to, like a past trauma or something. And so, with that, I would work with somebody. I would not necessarily say that it's not a good practice for you. Again, I would go, and I'm not going to answer anything specifically for you, and I don't know enough about this situation, but I might work with somebody to deal with, if that's the case, of what came up, because that's the only thing that I could think of where it would be harmful. Harmful. I think ultimately it's not, but in the short term, it could be very stressful and problematic. So if that's the case, I would work with someone.
And I'm wondering too if this is helpful to add. I had longer to read the question. Um, that I wonder if maybe the type of meditation practice they were doing was trying to start with something maybe a little too in depth and a little too advanced. Maybe just some music would help a person to not have their thoughts uh, take center stage, and they could have something to sort of guide them into something calm, or a video
Yeah.
with music, like we've used those in our
Yep.
mindful
Yep.
moments that we work on sometimes.
Yep.
I do have one more comment,
Hmm.
and I thank you all for using the Q&A. You can always um, put something in the Q&A, and it's actually only coming to us as hosts. So if you do have something in there, it's not going to go to all the attendees. Um, Ginger had a great question. Sure, other people will be interested too. She'd like to hear more about your certification as a brain health coach. She's not familiar with that kind of certification, and who are usually clients seen by a brain health coach.
Good question. So the brain health coaching that I did was through Dr. Amen, uh, and I think it's amenclinics.org. You can try that, but he'll come up. And it was 50 hours. It took me a whole lot longer than that because, like I said, it was for physicians. It's designed for physicians, so it goes into a lot of it. It's not really just about this. What he does is he goes into like ADD, and he looks at the different he see through his work. He's found that there are different types of ADD. There are different types or drivers of obesity, of depression, of anxiety. And for him, he's a psychiatrist, and he notes that psychiatric meds, most of the time, they don't work, and they don't work on the first try. And he has a much better rate of something like that working because he's looking at the brain through SPECT scans, and he is finding what part of the brain is driving the thing that you have. And so you might have a depression that's in one part of the brain or another part or another part. And so it's learning the certification was learning about all the different parts of the brain that would impact these different things in your life, and then knowing what you can do about it. So for the physicians, there were different medications for the different parts of the brain for the different problems that they were having. So I had to learn all that, although I'm never going to use that, and I would never tell you about that part, not coming from me. But it was an awesome class, and it's online. You can take it at your own pace, and so that was great. And so the people that you could use it with, a friend of mine is a cognitive therapist, and I think she also does brain health stuff. And so someone who is a master's level clinician could do it. I think anybody could probably do it. Kind of life coaching. I don't. I just use it for my job here. And but for the physicians, they're using it within their practice. So people who come to them um, would they would use it for that. Thanks for that question, Ginger.
Another
Jan,
one,
yes,
and we'll let you get back onto the PowerPoint. Thank
that's
you all
okay.
for your questions. Don't forget to use the Q&A to enter those in there. But I am seeing everything in chat too. The Purpose Driven Life, was that the book you were trying to think of? We had someone make a
No,
no.
no. Also a good book. No, I
Yeah.
think it was. I think it was. There's one book. There were like two books that I was pulling stuff from at that time, and one of them was when bad things happen to good people or something like that.
Hmm.
No, I'm gonna have to if I can figure it out. Um,
Okay.
I can
We'll
not. We
send it
can
in the
put it in the
follow-up
follow-up
email.
email. Yeah, but I can't.
Yeah.
I can't think of it.
Yeah, that's
Sorry.
okay. And also, is there a documented benefit or a detriment to the use of brain supplements, short or long term?
Um, there are, so I don't, again, I feel like I don't want to do anything that might be prescribing. You, I, you have to do your homework because some of the things um, that, and I'm a long time follower of supplements, decades long of herbs and uh, all kinds of natural approaches. And I know that there were things many years ago that the medical establishment was like, that doesn't work. And many of them have been proven over time to work. Um, and it might work for you. So yeah, uh, there is some research now around things like ginkgo, which was on the bubble for a long time. Um, Magnesium L-threonate crosses the blood-brain barrier, whereas the other magnesiums don't. Hydrogen water crosses the blood-brain barrier that is good for your brain. Um, so those are there. You need to look. You need to um, don't just jump on something, either get to someone who knows more than you do about it or get to go through the research. And you have to be really careful because sometimes they'll, especially when it comes to like foods, it'll be um, I'm going to pick something extreme. Candy is good for your brain. Well, compared to what? So was that compared to alcohol? Well, maybe candy is better. I don't know. But compared to broccoli, no. So you have to look at those kinds of things too. What were they comparing it with? So just some thoughts on that. All right, now and hands down. So I'm going to keep on going. Um, we need to be social. We need relationships in our lives. That decreases the risk of dementia. It improves our physical health. It helps our immune system. It increases capillary formation, and that's all the little blood vessels, and helps form new neuronal growth in the brain. It decreases depression and it decreases stress. And then I just have to make a plug for hearing aids. People don't want to be seen with hearing aids, I guess, which is why now, I've worn glasses for years. Somehow glasses is okay in society, but hearing aids aren't. They're becoming much more acceptable, I believe, anyway. And what I would say about that is we know you can't hear us. You don't realize that you're not hearing things, but we realize it because it's the third time we've said it, and that's when you've turned around, or you're giving answers that don't fit what we're talking about, or smiling and nodding when an answer was required. So go ahead and get them. Get the hearing aids. They they are now requiring you to be processing rather than sitting there in quiet. You're processing what's coming in, and then you're processing what your response is going to be. So get the hearing aid, be so careful. We need to learn throughout our lives as well. And this does not have to be book learning. In fact, if you are a book learner, you want to go and you want to do something else uh, that will also require you to learn. And uh, so I'll give you an example with my mom. My mom has knitted since she was 6 years old, and and she does it constantly. Now that she's older, she's doing it constantly. As I was growing up, she would do it intermittently, but she never really was without it. Well, if you watch her, she can be having a conversation. She can be watching TV. If she's just making a hat, which she's making a lot of for just to give away these days, she doesn't have to think about it hardly at all. Now, that can still be good because it can still put you into a quiet zone where you're helping your brain in that sort of sense. But if you watch her have to follow a pattern, that's learning. That's requiring her to stop and to think. Now, she would also be good to go and do something like take up crocheting or do some book learning or something else that is now requiring a different part of your brain. Um, Dancing and like a ballroom dance where you have to coordinate that, and uh, ping pong, any table, any racket sport are really good for the back of your brain, for your cerebellum, really good for that, for balance and all kinds of things. And what learning does is it builds cognitive reserve. I mentioned this before when I was talking about the having purpose in your life. It builds cognitive reserve, which just gives you more to draw on. We tend to see with older people that their brain has atrophied over time. And so this is helping us to keep that brain volume and to stay better longer. Exercise is just phenomenal. It is my daughter calls it, she her background before nursing was exercise physiology, and she's like, Mom, exercise is the magic pill. It just helps with so much. And for this purpose, for the purpose of the brain, it needs to be cardiovascular. It needs to be working on that vascular system that's going to support the uh, circulation in the brain. For uh, for the quieting part, it can be yoga, it can be things like that. And then other types of exercise are just great for the body. They might have brain impacts as well, but the research is like we need the cardiovascular part to keep our brains healthy. But exercise will help with depression over time. It beats out medication. It helps with focus. It helps to decrease stress. It lowers blood pressure. It helps control blood sugar levels. It helps you to maintain a healthy weight, and it boosts immunity, among other things. So exercise is just incredible. Um, Exercise also helps support the hippocampus, which I had mentioned is a real memory part of the brain. And that without exercise over time, that will atrophy, that will get smaller. But again, all good news here. With exercise, that can switch, that can change, and you'll kind of, I call it, reinvigorate the hippocampus again. So exercise is just awesome for your brain. Another thing we need to do is to eat well. Eat well, start now, no matter how old you are or however bad your eating has been. Start eating better now. Well, what does eating better mean? Well, for Alzheimer's, it that means this is something, I think this is a huge point right here. It is currently thought to be incurable by most. Dr. Amen would say, no, it's not incurable, but preventable. So most people right now would say we can prevent it by doing all the things that we're talking about, dietary and lifestyle change. But once you get it, we can't cure it. There's now been research that shows that we can be pulling it back. We can make improvements through it. It's not just, I'm going to clean up my diet a little bit. It's making all of these changes. And the guidelines for the prevention of Alzheimer's disease are vegetables and legumes, which is beans, peas, and lentils, fruits, and whole grains. We should use those to replace meat and dairy products as the primary staples of your diet. So basically a vegan diet or a whole food plant-based diet. Because vegans can, or I believe Oreos, that's the thing I always hear, Oreos are vegan, but they're not good for your body. So this new study, that it's not new anymore, it was out in 2024, says that we can reverse Alzheimer's disease. We can improve function, even in also in mild cognitive impairment, which is, I think we tend to think of this as normal, that you will lose memory as you get older. And that's not true. That's not normal aging. That's not healthy aging. That is what happens to a lot of people, but that is not a phase you have to pass through. So it can even help with that part of mild cognitive impairment, which may or may not lead to Alzheimer's. It doesn't have to. So some of these changes that they found worked. Again, this was a comprehensive change. This is by Dr. Ornish, who had previously looked at using diet and lifestyle changes to change diabetes and heart disease, and maybe something else. And I was like, okay, well, what about Alzheimer's? So whole foods, minimally processed, plant-based, high in complex carbohydrates, mostly fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, soy products, nuts and seeds. Exercise, they had people doing things like walking, had to be aerobic, like walking for 30 minutes a day with mild strength training at least 3 times a week. And then they did things for stress management, things like we've talked about. They had group support because that social piece is so important. And that you can get this in different ways. It doesn't have to be a support group, but it can be. And then these were some of the supplements that they used. And they found that people could reverse early Alzheimer's. And so, really important information to have. And I love this. This is Michael Pollan. This is old at this point, but he said but it fits everything that we just heard. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And so by food, he means real food, fruits, that all the things I just listed. Eat real food. Don't eat too much, and they should be mostly plants. So it doesn't mean you can't have any meat. And I wanted to show the new pyramid just in case there were any questions about that. The new pyramid supports that. What it does do, you hear a lot of talk about the carnivore diet, and I'm not really going to speak to that. My son lost a ton of weight. I cringe, watching him eat. But he lost a ton of weight, a ton on that. People have also lost a ton of weight on a vegan diet. Um, I think the carnivore part that probably worked for him. He has an addictive personality, so it got him off. He could use his addiction to, okay, I'm gonna stay with this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do it every day, and it got him away from the garbage that he was eating. So I think anything that he had done that got him away from the garbage would have been incredibly helpful. So I, I where I go for my nutritional information is to nutritionfacts.org. And that is Dr. Michael Greger. Nutritionfacts.org looks at, there's so much dietary research that comes out, and a lot of it is terrible. They're terrible studies. He takes a look at all of the research. He has a team, and they assess it in an unbiased way. And what he keeps coming back to, what the research is saying, is that it is plant-based is the best way. Whole foods, plant-based is the best way to be eating. So I'm just going to throw both of those things out there, because people can also probably say this diet worked for me, that diet worked for me. What you have to look at, I'd love for my son to go get some blood work done and say, is it good in terms of what's going on in his blood, what's circulating through his blood. I'm going to leave that there. And if you are plant-based, you can put beans in for your meats. That would be a good substitution for your protein. Eating to ward off stroke, fiber. We need to have more fiber in our diets. We need to have potassium in our diets. And interestingly enough, what's the first thing that you think of when you think of potassium? It's usually bananas. Bananas are great. They're not necessarily this phenomenal source of potassium. The best sources are greens, beans, and sweet potatoes. If you Google it, you look at the list. Even Reese's Pieces will be on there. Not a good source. Citrus decreases blood pressure, and it increases blood flow. And experiment with that. Try if your fingertips are cold, it increases the capillary blood flow, so you can warm up your fingertips. Antioxidants are really important for warding off a stroke. Plant-based foods have 64 times the antioxidants than animal food. So if you're doing something like carnivore, you're missing all of these other things. So I think over time, with every diet, it's the time that is going to prove out um, whether it's good or bad. But you can go to nutritionfacts.org and you can sort all kinds of different things. You can sort through, like, you can put blueberries in, and you can also put diabetes in, and you can see whatever it is that you want to look up. You can find out more information about it there. Oh, blueberries, a fun fact: Maine wild blueberries. They got to be the wild kind, the tinier kind, not these. I mean, you could get some ginormous blueberries, which may still be good for you, but the wild ones are even better. They're good for the health of your blood vessels, for blood vessel regeneration, reducing inflammation, lowering blood pressure, and making you happier. Wyman is a good brand for that. Um, I've been mentioning Michael Greger. He has a great book on all of this. If you don't like research, do not read this book. It is a fat book, How Not to Die from the Top 10 Things That Americans Tend to Die From. And he'll go through a chapter there on brain, how not to die from brain diseases. And you can see all of that. Go ahead, Jen, what's your question?
We have a question from Carl. Is a high protein and low carb for weight loss diet a bad thing for your brain and for your health and brain health?
So I would say it depends on what you're eating, what your sources of protein are. You should still have the best source that you can. Things like grass-fed, grass-finished beef, chicken, organic. So you still want to look at what you're putting into your body. Again, I'm gonna refer you to nutritionfacts.org and let you put in your questions there and let you see. I'm going to say the research right now is saying that um, it's whole foods, plant-based, and doesn't mean you can't have a piece of salmon, doesn't mean you can't have a piece of grass-fed beef. It just means that you want to put the emphasis uh, on fruits and vegetables and plant-based, expanded beyond fruits and vegetables. And I'm going to direct you there because I don't want to come down on one side or the other. I'm going to go take you right to the research to answer your questions. Sorry for skirting around that one. Fun cruciferous vegetables. So these are things like Brussels sprouts and cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli. It has an enzyme in it called sulforaphane that is an amazing enzyme. It protects your brain, it protects your eyesight, it protects from free radical damage. It helps to detox your body, and it helps prevent and treat cancers. But if you cook what you're going to have, it has almost no sulforaphane in it. It hasn't had the opportunity to develop it. So what you can do is eat raw, but like I love broccoli soup. What you do if you wanted to say make broccoli soup is you do what they call hack and hold. You chop it all up, but don't make your soup for 40 minutes. Then cook it. The enzyme is already in there at that point. Cooking isn't going to destroy it. It will stop it from developing if it hasn't been cut up. It's got to be cut up first, and then you want to blend it and then cook it. Um, for frozen things, you can put or cooked. So let's say you have cooked cruciferous. What I'll do if I'm doing broccoli is I'll leave one of the little things out and I'll chop it up really fine and I'll put it onto my cooked broccoli or into my broccoli soup. That's enough to have the sulforaphane come out. The other thing that you can do is put mustard powder or horseradish. Those are also cruciferous. They will help to bring out the sulforaphane. And I I don't have it out now, but I used to have mustard powder sitting on um, my kitchen table, and I would just take out a pinch. It doesn't. If you put a lot, you'll taste it, and you probably won't like it. So just put a little bit, and that's enough to help also bring out the sulforaphane. Just some good tips. We need to remove the toxins from what we're eating. We can go organic. We can grow our own. We can reduce alcohol, which is a toxin. Again, so sorry. Drink filtered water. Don't eat processed foods. Watch the artificial colors and sweeteners. Go vegetarian, go vegan. That lower down on the food chain, there's less accumulation of the toxins. And you can also take a look at the Dirty Dozen app, which will tell you what the this changes yearly. They look at the pesticides that are in. There's a Dirty Dozen, and then there's I think a good dozen or good. There's a number, and it'll show you the things to. You don't have to buy organic for everything. Just make sure these things are organic. Ways to remove toxins. We need to watch our house cleaning products, our personal hygiene products. You can go to safecosmetics.org and the Think Dirty app. The Think Dirty app, you can take a picture of your item and it'll pull it up and it'll tell you whether it's like red light, green light, yellow. Used to be that you couldn't find everything in there, so it wasn't too productive, but I think now it's better. And the environment, watching for mold, smoke, paint fumes. Sleep is incredibly important. And we need sleep for our brain to clean itself of toxins and plaques during the night, which is why if you haven't slept for a few nights, it's really hard to think. We need to clean out our brain. It will cause brain fog, memory issues, and can lead to dementia over time. And it's Dr. Amen who says that if he sees sleep apnea come up on someone's profile or if they test for that, the first thing he's doing is treating the sleep apnea because it is that detrimental to our brains and to everything overall. Get what sleep you require each night, and for children's ages, you can look up in the upper right hand corner there and go to WebMD and put it. You can find what do different ages need. Reduce and manage your stress so you're not going to bed at night and just thinking, and that's killing the ants. The last one, number 8, get rid of those ants. Reduce the use of electronic devices at night. Stick to a regular schedule. Reduce caffeine, especially at night. Drink chamomile tea, something that's going to calm you down. And you probably know what it is that keeps you up at night, so fix that thing. This is our document, Brain Health, that pulls together all of these things that I've been talking about, all of the evidence-based things. So you can get that document if you like. You can share that out with anybody electronically or print some off and hand them out to who you work with. I would just challenge you to think about what changes will you make? What's something that if you feel like putting it in the chat as kind of a public accountability, you can do that if you like. What do you need to do? Because we all tend to know what they are. And many of us will say, oh, I wish so-and-so was here. I wish that my husband would listen to this. I wish this person would begin to do more of that. The best way to change other people is for you to change yourself first. There are lots of different approaches. One is to make one small change at a time. So maybe getting rid of diet soda or getting rid of red meat 1 month. You can clean up one area. So I'm going to clean up my food, or I'm going to exercise more. Pick the area that you want to do, or you can tackle everything at once and say, this is kind of my approach. Is like, I'm doing everything because some stuff falls off. And so I'm going to tackle it all and decide maybe who you can be accountable to as well. Can you do it with somebody who is not going to bring you off of your plan? And you can make a daily check off. These are all of the things that we've talked about. You can put a goal in each one of these areas that you're going to do. The only one I didn't talk about yet is monitoring health. And so that's things like if you have something that can be monitored, like you have high blood pressure or you have diabetes, you should then be monitoring those things daily or with some frequency so that you have an idea of where you are. And so this might be what a daily checkoff could look like. Writing down 2 things that you're grateful for: killing your ants, meditating 10 minutes, brisk walk for 20 minutes, 10,000 steps daily, going to call a friend 3 times a week. You're going to use the Dr. Greger. So Dr. Greger also has an app um, that will help you to so all the things that he says are in his book are good. I didn't talk about that on that one. Let me go back to that. Okay, it's up here. The Dr. Gregor's Daily Dozen. Uh, it will help you to check off the categories of things that you ate that day. This is focused on food, I think. I think primarily, maybe also water, and he might have updated it too since I saw it. And it's amazing when you do it. You're like, shoot, I didn't get nearly enough beans, or I got berries, but I didn't get any other fruits, or I got cruciferous, but I didn't get greens or any other vegetables. And so it gives you this way of checking off. And you'd be surprised if you use this, and you're really trying to get all the boxes, it's harder to have things that don't fit in the boxes if you're like, no, I don't, I can't have that because I haven't had my beans yet. So you go and have your beans and you don't pick up the Skittles. At least hopefully that's the way it works. If you're trying to hit all the boxes, you won't be hungry for the other things. Go back to where we were. So monitoring your health, um, maybe doing that at the end too, watching your sleep, um, being going for just being vegetarian 4 days a week if you're trying to increase it. So think about, what will your approach be? What will you do? How will you change? And what can you bring into, if you have a job where you're responsible for helping uh, to teach people or help them in their daily lives, how can you make some changes to help them as well? So I thank you. And if you would, and I'll open it up to any questions that anybody has. We have some time. And if you would take our 1 minute survey, it's really fast. And that will also allow you to get a certificate for attending today.